Chapter 3 Research Designs and Traditions in Medical Education Research An Overview. Megan M. McConnell, Renate Cork. Abstract. Medical education research investigates a range of complex processes, outcomes, and systems using a variety of research methodologies. The goal of this chapter is to describe key characteristics of three research paradigms: quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods. Quantitative research focuses on measuring and or manipulating variables in order to test objective theories. Data from quantitative research are usually numbers gathered from standardized, validated instruments. Qualitative research focuses on exploring how individuals or groups experience and ascribe meaning to social phenomena and on understanding the social processes behind their actions. Data from qualitative studies tend to take the form of words rather than numbers and are often generated through observations, interviews, or documents. Quantitative and qualitative research paradigms are not discrete categories, but rather belong on a continuum. Mixed methods research integrates elements of quantitative and qualitative approaches within a single study. There are several types of mixed methods research designs, which differ in how qualitative and quantitative data are integrated with one another. Whether a researcher should use a quantitative, qualitative, or mixed methods design depends on the nature of the research question. By familiarizing readers with a range of research methodologies, this chapter serves as a useful starting place for those interested in conducting, appraising, and publishing scholarly work in medical education. Key words: medical education, research design, research methodology, quantitative, qualitative, mixed methods. Assess need. Research in medical education, as with any other field of research, begins with a question that you would like to answer. This question may arise from a problem or concern encountered in your daily practice, a situation or practice that you think could be improved, or a topic that you would like to learn more about. This question is the pivotal first step of any research endeavor. It directs all subsequent research activities, including the choice of research methodology and the selection of data collection methods. But it is not enough to simply ask the right questions. You must also determine the best way to answer them. It is necessary for you to select a research design that aligns appropriately with your research question. Medical education has been described as a field of study rather than an academic discipline. As such, it is able to draw insight from theoretical frameworks and methodological practices that are rooted in other disciplines, such as education, psychology, sociology, and anthropology. Each of these disciplines have their own set of concepts, assumptions, theories, and methodologies that inform the research process. Consequently, medical education researchers use a variety of research traditions and methods to investigate their research questions. Such theoretical and methodological diversity can be daunting, particularly to those new to educational research. This chapter describes various quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods research designs commonly used in medical education research. By doing so, we hope this chapter will help researchers select the most appropriate study design and ultimately improve the quality of medical education research, scholarship, and practice. Brief. There are a variety of different quantitative, qualitative, and mixed method research designs available to medical education researchers. It is important for researchers to ensure that their research methodology aligns with their proposed research question. Understanding key principles and practices of research methodology is crucial in conducting, appraising, and publishing medical education research and scholarship. CO and 3XTUARIZE. Dr. K runs an annual resuscitation skills workshop for medical students at her institution. She works hard to make the workshop fun, humorous, and engaging for her students. Recently, however, she has been concerned that such an approach may not actually help students learn the course material. After all, resuscitation is not going to be humorous when the students have to do it in the real world. This scenario presents an opportunity for educational scholarship and research. What are some potential research questions and methodologies available to Dr. K? Dr. K considers running an experiment to examine whether fun educational materials improve learning outcomes in her students. She asks, do students who receive humorous learning materials perform better on a resuscitation examination relative to students who receive non-humorous materials? Dr. K considers a correlational study. She wonders whether student engagement is related to a teacher's sense of humor. She wonders, is there a relationship between an instructor's use of humor while teaching and learners' engagement with the learning materials? Dr. K may want to conduct a survey study to describe students' perceptions towards using humor as a teaching tool. She decides to ask, from the students' perspectives, what are the perceived effects of humor on learning, the preferred types of humor, and potential benefits and drawbacks of using humor when teaching clinical concepts. Dr. K could do a constructivist grounded theory study. Here, Dr. K thinks it would be useful to develop a theory to explain how learners engage with activities like hers. She asks, how do learners engage with fun educational experiences? What individual and social factors impact how they engage? Dr. K may be interested in shaping her study into an ethnography. She may want to know more about how learners interact with each other, with educators, and with her educational materials. She decides to ask, what is the learning culture in a non-mandatory resuscitation skills workshop? Dr. K may decide to take up phenomenological research questions. Dr. K decides that she would like to know, how do learners experience fun when engaging in educational activities? What role do they feel that fun educational activities play in their overall educational experience? Dr. K may want to use action research to look at this problem in a different way. She decides to work with her colleagues and students to explore the impact of fun on learning and develop a framework to help educators and learners integrate fun without sacrificing learning. Dr. K may want to conduct a convergent mixed methods designed to explore how fun educational experiences influence students' engagement with learning activities. She gathers both quantitative and qualitative data in order to compare the findings. She wonders how these data sources converge and diverge from one another. Dr. may want to develop a survey that assesses student engagement. To do this, she considers using an exploratory mixed methods design, where she first conducts a grounded theory study, develop a theory to examine cognitive, emotional, and social components of learner engagement. Dr. K uses these data to develop a survey that she distributes to the entire student body. Dr. K may perform an explanatory mixed methods designed to examine whether students' cultural identity modulates the impact of humor on learning outcomes. Dr. K first conducts an experiment to see whether students' test scores are influenced by the type of humor used. After running the experiment, Dr. K conducts an ethnographic study to understand how students' cultural background influences their attitudes towards the perceived value of these different types of humor. Describe. Medical education is a field of study that examines the impact of individual, social, organizational, and/or instructional factors on educational experiences, processes, and outcomes. The field draws on a range of literatures, including education, sociology, anthropology, and psychology, all of which use different theories and methodologies to answer research questions. Selecting the most appropriate research design and methodology is an essential step in the research process. Inappropriate study designs will reduce the quality of research findings and can lead to inaccurate or incomplete conclusions. Quantitative research. Quantitative research is a theory-driven approach that examines relationships among variables. These variables are measured using standardized, numerically based instruments and analyzed using statistical procedures in order to determine whether a theory explains or predicts the phenomenon of interest. Quantitative research encompasses a broad spectrum of research designs, ranging from small-scale descriptive studies to complex, multicentric experimental studies. In the following section, we describe three quantitative traditions commonly used in medical education research: experimental, correlational, and survey designs. Experimental research. The purpose of experimental research is to examine potential cause and effect relationships between two variables. In a traditional experimental study, a researcher manipulates one or more variables and then measures the impact of this manipulation on an outcome variable. A critical aspect of experimental design is that of a comparison, whereby the dependent variable is compared across individuals who receive different educational treatments or methods. For example, a researcher may compare test scores from a group of learners who received an educational intervention to learners who did not. Randomization is another important feature of experimentalism. In true experimental designs, participants are randomly assigned to the independent variable. Sometimes, however, randomization is not possible as individuals belong to pre-existing groups. Such cases are referred to as quasi-experimental designs and are used to examine cause and effect relationships when it is not possible or practical to randomize individuals to different groups. True experimental designs, while widely used in clinical research, are not as common in medical education research. There are several reasons for this. For example, randomization faces a unique set of challenges within educational contexts. There are ethical concerns with randomizing learners to different learning activities when one of these activities is presumed to be better than the other. Relatedly, it can be challenging to appropriately control for confounding variables in educational settings. The goal of experimentalism is to infer causality between experimental controlled independent variables and observed dependent variables. For this reason, a major focus for any researcher using experimental designs is control. However, the complexity of educational interventions do not often allow for such control. As Norman and Eva state, it is well nigh impossible to identify what aspects of the workshop was the causal variable in inducing change, nor, for that matter, is it even likely that any single variable was causal for everyone in the workshop. Nonetheless, when used appropriately and rigorously, experimental designs can substantially deepen our understandings of the processes and mechanisms involved in learning. Correlational research. Correlational research is used to examine relationships among two or more variables. Unlike experimental research, variables are not manipulated or controlled by the researcher. There are two main purposes of correlational research. In exploratory studies, the goal is to examine relationships among several variables. For example, a researcher may be interested in whether there is a relationship between physician burnout and the number of overtime hours worked. In predictive studies, the goal is to use scores from one variable to predict scores on another variable. For example, a researcher may want to determine whether students' scores on a practice examination can predict their performance on a national licensure examination. Survey research. The purpose of survey research is to describe characteristics of a population. Researchers using survey designs typically want to determine how the members of a population distribute themselves on one or more variables. In this way, survey research methods are primarily descriptive. Information is collected from a group of people in order to describe certain aspects or characteristics of the population for which that group belongs. For example, a researcher may want to describe medical students' perspectives on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on their medical training. To do so, surveys gather standardized information, meaning that participants receive the same instruments and questions, and this allows findings to be generalized to the larger population. In many surveys, participants are asked to quantify their experience. However, surveys also commonly integrate written responses, and these are most often analyzed quantitatively or used to inform analysis of the numerical scores. Qualitative research. Qualitative research is the rigorous study of people, cases, phenomena, social situations, and processes in their natural settings. The aim of qualitative research is to gain a deep understanding of social phenomena by documenting experiences using qualitative data generated from observations, interviews, or documents. Qualitative research is most appropriate when the purpose of the research project is one to explore a topic on which little is known, two to make sense of complex and contextually specific phenomena, three to understand how individuals experience a phenomenon, the meaning they apply to it, or how they interpret what they experience, four to construct a new theory or theoretical framework, and five to generate a deep understanding of a complex or multifaceted phenomenon. Qualitative research covers a wide range of theoretical paradigms, methodologies, and research methods, all of which are designed to uncover different aspects of human experience and behavior. In the following section, we describe four methodologies commonly used in medical education research: grounded theory, ethnography, phenomenology, and action research. Table 1: Description and resources for various qualitative and quantitative research methodologies. Methodology: quantitative research, experimental, purpose, examine cause and effect relationships between independent variable and dependent variable. Correlation: explore relationships between two or more variables. Survey: describe characteristics of a population at a given point in time. Methodology: qualitative research, grounded theory. Purpose: develop theory to explain social processes or situations. Ethnography: describe how a culture functions through individual and shared beliefs, norms, and social practices. Phenomenology: describe individuals' lived experience of a phenomenon. Action research: research and develop solutions to problems relevant to the researcher's practice. Grounded theory, perhaps the most commonly used qualitative methodology in medical education. Grounded theory is used to examine social processes or phenomena by documenting individuals' construction of shared meanings and the ways in which those meanings shape their experiences and behaviors. Early grounded theory methodologies took an objectivist perspective, assuming that the researcher is an objective observer in generating analyses. More recently, constructivist grounded theory has understood the researcher as having an active role in making decisions and interpretations. Grounded theory methodology is marked by iterative study design, as researchers engage in concurrent data generation and analysis, and ongoing theoretical sampling based on analytic directions that they derive from their concurrent analyses. Thus, results of the ongoing data analysis inform subsequent data collection, and conversely, new data can then inform analysis. Sampling procedures in grounded theory are initially purposeful, followed by theoretical sampling, in which researchers generate new data in order to further develop their evolving analyses. Grounded theory uses a variety of qualitative data collection methods. Observations, interviews, and focus groups are most common in our field, though grounded theory can involve many types of data, including documents and other forms of text. Analyses are generated using a constant comparative approach through which researchers compare data to each other and their analytic categories against the data, eventually resulting in a new theorization of the phenomenon that is grounded in the data. Ethnography. Stemming from early anthropological research, ethnography is the study of culture understood through the social interactions, behaviors, and perceptions of groups of people in a given social setting. Originally, ethnography focused on objectively understanding a cultural group from the outside. However, it has since evolved to appreciate that researchers always come to research with a perspective. Today, there are many different approaches to ethnography, including institutional ethnography, which examines individuals' participation in larger institutions, and autoethnography, where the researcher documents their own experiences. Within medical education, ethnography has been used to study the cultures that inform teaching and learning in institutional settings across different levels of professional training, including the cultures of teams and organizations. The goal of ethnography is to provide rich, holistic insights into the practices of a specific cultural group, focusing on what people actually do in a culture. As such, a hallmark of ethnography is its emphasis on deep and often prolonged engagement with the culture, including observations and field notes that garner a rich picture of the practices and routines that drive everyday life. However, ethnographic research rarely relies on a single source of data. Ethnographers use other forms of data, such as interviews and documents, in order to view the same practices from multiple angles and develop an appreciation of the ways in which participants interpret their practices and view their world. Phenomenology. Phenomenology seeks to explore a phenomenon from the perspective of those who have lived it. There are many different approaches to phenomenology, and each is informed by unique theoretical traditions. All phenomenological approaches seek to deeply describe the meanings individuals ascribe to their lived experiences, both in terms of what was experienced and how it was experienced. Phenomenology is most appropriate when the researcher is interested in investigating the meaning of a phenomenon or experience from a particular perspective or set of perspectives. For example, within medical education, phenomenology can be used to broaden our understanding of individuals' lived experiences in the context of their learning and professional development. To gain insights into participants' understanding of their lived experiences, phenomenology generally relies on prolonged, in-depth interviews. However, phenomenology also employs other methods. Notably, researchers may incorporate participants' reflections through personal documents, such as diaries, e-portfolios, reflections, and observations. Action research. In action research, research is not conducted on participants, but rather is designed, conducted, and disseminated by professionals in the field on their own practice. This type of research attempts to bridge the gap between research and practice, focusing on practical issues that have been identified as being problematic and developing practical research products that can support researchers and other stakeholders in improving their practice. For this reason, action research is a powerful tool for bringing about change and improving practice at the local level. Developing findings that transfer beyond the specific setting is rarely the primary intent, since action research focuses on specific problems and issues within an organization or community. Action research is underutilized in medical education settings, but could be used very productively by professionals interested in making data-driven changes in their practice or larger organizational contexts. Action research has been broken down in different ways by different theorists, but can be broadly understood as conducted through four phases. 1. Identification of an issue and setting up a project. 2. Reflection. 3. Planning. 4. Evaluation of both process and products. These phases are often cyclic and can overlap. Action researchers can use quantitative, or qualitative methods but tend to rely more heavily on qualitative methods, such as interviews, researcher journals, field notes, and documents in order to explore the nuances of behaviors and interactions in practice. Mixed methods research, often quantitative and qualitative research, are defined in opposition to one another. Quantitative studies focus on deduction, confirmation, explanation, prediction, and theory testing, while qualitative studies focus on induction, discovery, exploration, interpretation, and theory generation. Such polarization has resulted in a divide between quantitative and qualitative researchers who often restrict themselves exclusively to either qualitative or quantitative designs. Some researchers, however, have argued that qualitative and quantitative research are not contradictory to one another, but rather are complementary. Proponents of this approach argue that combining qualitative and quantitative methods maximizes the strengths of both approaches, minimizes the weaknesses, and provides a more comprehensive understanding of a phenomenon. Mixed methods research is defined as a class of research where the researcher mixes or combines quantitative and qualitative research techniques, methods, approaches, concepts, or language into a single study. There are three main types of mixed methods designs: convergent, exploratory sequential, and explanatory sequential designs. In convergent designs, quantitative and qualitative data are collected in parallel, separately but at roughly the same time. The results from each method are then integrated together in the final analysis. The goal is to merge qualitative and quantitative data and describe whether there is convergence or divergence between the two data sources. The assumption of this approach is that both qualitative and quantitative data provide different sources of information, and using both forms of data will allow for a more comprehensive understanding of the research problem. In exploratory sequential designs, researchers first collect and analyze qualitative data and use the findings to inform subsequent quantitative data collection. For example, a researcher may conduct semi-structured interviews to identify key concepts to be included in a new survey tool. In explanatory sequential designs, researchers collect quantitative data, analyzes the results, and then use qualitative data to help explain these results. In this way, researchers use the quantitative results to plan the qualitative follow-up. For example, a researcher may first collect survey responses and then conduct qualitative interviews to help explain and elaborate on any confusing or contradictory survey responses. Summarize: as with any science, medical education research uses a variety of different research methodologies to answer questions relevant to the field. In this chapter, we described several quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods designs. Their choice depends on several factors such as the research question, the researcher's training and experience, and the overall purpose of the study. Quantitative studies focus on outcomes, generalization, predictions, and theory testing using deductive reasoning, while qualitative studies focus on process, context, interpretation, meaning, and theory building using inductive reasoning. Mixed methods research integrates qualitative and quantitative methodologies in a single design in order to maximize strengths and minimize weaknesses. Understanding the principles and practices of these different research methodologies will help researchers select the most appropriate methodology to answer their research question and ensure that their research findings inform and advance educational theory and or practices. Evaluate: what are some of the key differences between qualitative and quantitative research designs? What are some of the similarities? Locate several research studies published in scholarly medical education journals and come up with a research question based on the results of each study. Discuss what methodological approach the authors used and why. Think about a topic within medical education that you would like to study. Using this topic, write down a research question that aligns to each of the quantitative, qualitative, and mixed method research designs described in this chapter. Road ahead. Medical education is a field rife with complex, practical questions that have far-reaching impact on education and practice. While building effective studies to answer these questions can be a daunting task, it can also be incredibly rewarding, and there are many resources available to support clinicians and other researchers in developing their research acumen. To get started, we suggest that new researchers decide on a question or type of research that most interests you and begin to develop your knowledge base. Below, we suggest several entry-level research methods texts to get you started. It is also helpful to find ways to join the conversation on topics that interest you by participating in academic conferences, journal clubs, or other venues for sharing ideas. Find collaborators who you like working with and who have complementary expertise. It's a good idea to get feedback on your ideas early and often. Some of these conversations may simply offer a new perspective or resources to guide you. Others may lead to new collaborations of mutual interest. Build your mentorship network. You may find a single mentor who can guide you through your methodological decisions, professional development, and research processes specific to your context. Or you may need to begin developing a broader mentorship network to meet your needs.